Thank you for joining us at Rays of Hope Masikhanye, a lifestyle talk show hosted by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, seeking to empower individuals, families, and communities in leading lives that make this world a better place. My name is Mvunelo, and we are today looking into a very interesting topic on business by the book, biblical principles for the marketplace. The word of the Lord says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" Help me as we derive inspiration from that light and delve into this very important topic. And today I am joined once again by Pastor Amyas Mvunelo, all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa. Pastor Mvunelo, thank you for taking the time to join us. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you once again for the invitation, and I'm glad we could be here.
In the last 2 weeks, you have done a great job in convincing us as the viewers, and myself certainly, that God is actually interested, and not only interested as an outsider, but he even orchestrated the whole idea of enterprising. Now, if that is true, and you've convinced me that it is true, are there any biblical principles that we can follow as we are trying to make our way in the marketplace?
Surely there are several that we could follow. It's a wide range, it's a broad spectrum question that you've asked. Let me touch on them without any particular order.
Okay.
I think for me it is important that you think your plan in advance.
Okay.
When we see the creation story, we see an execution of God's plan. If you do not plan for your business, if you do not plan for your direction that you want to take, you will not necessarily arrive at what you are looking for.
Okay.
So God is a strategist. He sits down and says, listen here, this is the strategic direction we want to take. This is the long range we want to take.
This is the end from the beginning.
This is from the beginning to the end. And so that, I think, to me, is important, that you do that. That's the first thing.
Okay.
I think it's also important that you align your processes and put everything in place to ensure that your vision is realized. God sets up the Holy Spirit in his place. He sets up the word Jesus Christ in his place to make sure that at the right moment, execution is in place. So again, that you align your systems is important. Even with the Sabbath, by the way, God does not expect people to give a sacrificial system to him. He does not expect people to give sacrifices with him without creating an economic framework. He starts off in Genesis chapter 2 and he says, I have given you everything you need. I've given you the fruit and the vegetables for you to eat from. He creates that framework so that they can be able to realize. And he expects them to procreate. Again, you see that at work. God in advance. Some people think, and I may not agree with them freely, but there's some people think that every time a child is born, God is involved in the intricacies of the chromosomes and all of that. But what we see in actual fact is God has created these things, placed them, and so that everything runs on its own.
Okay.
He does not need to run. He automates. So if you can, your processes to be automated, automate them. Because clearly that's going to help save a lot of your energy and a lot of your resources. But you've got to have tested them first to see if these would work and all of that. And so you automate. But also, build in the risk factor. Find ways you would mitigate, manage risk. Because if you do not, things will take you by surprise. In advance, well before the there was the problem of sin. God thought about the ways to manage risk.
Sure.
How do we manage it? And this is where Scripture becomes beautiful, because it says, before the foundations of the earth, he decided that he is going to save us through Jesus Christ. Now, what was interesting is everything was set in place, but also the risk factor, the risk mitigating plan, the contingency plan was Jesus Christ himself. And hence he came to die on the cross. When Adam and Eve sinned, he comes in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, he says, hey, let's kick in on our risk management plan. This is what has happened now. Let's not allow them to go into... So those kind of thought
I like that.
Processes.
I've got to interject you there, because I absolutely love that, because you would think that, and I love this, I mean, this is a very good point you are making. Here you have a perfect God with a perfect plan. But in his mind, he also knows that this is not only him who is in the plan. There are also other people, other stakeholders, as it were, that have their freedom of choice, that they could do despite this plan. And so he makes a contingency plan for their possible choices. So basically what you're saying is that it doesn't matter how grand your idea is and how great it looks on paper and how convincing of success it may look, there's always a possibility that something could go wrong, and you need to plan for that. I got you that right?
We are hit by a crisis right now. We're in the middle of a crisis. How do we survive? Many businesses are going under because there is no contingency plan, because there's no thinking into the future, into the risk, to the possibilities that things could go wrong. But if we had thought, I mean, one of the beautiful things is the small businesses are able to adapt their models, their business models, because now things are not working. We find a lot of people doing PPEs that they didn't think of, but in order to survive, just to survive this COVID, just to survive the pandemic, let's do something else while we get back. So those are thoughts that I think are important for us to think through and process through. So you got it right, that it is important for us to do that.
I'm sorry for interjecting. Initially, you had mentioned, obviously, we've just spoken about, risk mitigation, automation. You mentioned that, and of course, strategizing. Having seen the end from the beginning. Yes, please do continue.
So those are some of the things, but also, ideally, lay your business on solid foundation, not just in a spiritual sense, but lay your business on things that are, if it were possible, are going to survive the test of time. Whatever you sell, it must be something that is meeting a long-term need for people. The people that will be your customers. Find a way of ensuring that you have a way of connecting with them and connecting with them for a long term. Some people want to have short-term customers, customers who buy for the weekend, but yet you can create a long-term range and say, where am I going? What's the direction? How do I build this thing in such a way that it goes into the future? So different ways of making sure that what you are building is solid. But what I think also you need to do, and again, I'm drawing from Scripture, it is clear to me, again from the Sabbath, if you do not have a plan of recuperation, it's clear you cannot have people working 2-4-7. You're going to cripple those. God in advance in his wisdom gave humanity holidays, weekly breaks. If you are going to get maximum profit out of these people, invest in your people's rest. Invest on them, re-energize. Because if you are going to just be demanding output, productivity, without giving them, intentionally so, without giving them moments of rest, moments of recovery, moments of recuperation, you are not going to get maximum.
Sure.
Yes, expect maximum profit, drive maximum profit, but also invest in people taking time off.
I love that.
Why? Because if you look at the Sabbath, we are best off when we have intermissions, when we have breaks, when we have moments where we take back. Otherwise, the human machine cannot run forever. But also take care of your workers.
Wait, I need to take you back to something that was important that you said. But I love this on rest. Stephen Covey, as you would know, in the book The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, speaks about the PPC balance. How we need to strike that. Yes, we want the golden eggs, but we also need to take care of the goose that lays there. Otherwise, if you just concentrate on the eggs, you'll end up on the eggs. You'll end up killing the goose, and in the long term, you've lost the eggs. But before you mentioned the rest factor, you also spoke about long-term planning. Now, help me here, Pastor Amyas. As Christians, we are taught that the world is coming to an end soon. And soon could be tomorrow.
Yes.
Soon could be next week. Soon could be any time from now. How do you balance that with long-term planning? Doesn't that, work against even, the idea of planning for 50 years from now if the world would come to an end tomorrow?
You could die tomorrow. You could die in the next minute.
Sure.
Do you wait for death? Or do you work until you die? You work and you plan as if Jesus Christ is not going to come. You do everything with not the end of your life, and you work towards that. If it comes, it comes. If it comes tomorrow, the next second, the next minute, if Jesus Christ comes, if death comes, if anything comes, you are not found waiting. You are not found without in activity. You are busy. You do whatever you've got to do. In fact, I found quite an interesting insight that scripturally and in terms of the Hebrew language, there is no such a thing as retirement. That was quite a surprise to me because this communicates the idea that you work until you die.
I love that.
The only thing that will stop you is your death, not necessarily your wanting to stop and end, especially with the incorporation of the Sabbath now, which gives you weekly breaks, weekly holidays, weekly rests. Then you are able to manage your retirement better. I mean, you see these rabbis, they wait until they are gray hair and until they are dead. But anyway, so that's another important factor. So it's also important to take care of the people that work for you. If you do not take care of them in terms of their needs, their loyalty to you is decreased. The people will not be as loyal to you. But because you are a Christian, don't not only overwork them, but also don't create an impression that you have now found slaves in these people, the way you treat them. And the way you handle them. I mean, there are people who will come and say, my child is sick. How you respond to that shows that you care for the person. But if you are in such a way that, listen here, you're here to work, I have no care, no interest in what your children, don't tell me about your personal affairs, sort yourself out and all of that, I have no interest. You are then shooting yourself in the foot. The care that we show to the people, even in crisis times. I mean, now there are wellness programs, there are things that make work a pleasant place. And by the way, that leads to my other point, that it is important for us, especially as Christians, to remember that these people invest their time, their skill in your business, in the success of your business. If you neglect them on this particular point, you are going to run into problems. Make sure that your people have a pleasant environment. Create a pleasant environment where you are working so that they enjoy coming to work. It's not a drudgery. Remember, already work is a drudgery for some people. But create a pleasant working culture, a pleasant atmosphere for the people who work for you so that you are able to create look forward kind of sense to work. If the organization is chaotic, if the organization is unpleasant, people leave. If you are a terrible boss, people leave. If you are an unkind person, people leave. So create that kind of positive environment. Let them feel valued. Let them feel they are precious and they're important in your life. And I think with those principles, your chances of success are greater. You've increased them, but they may not have anything directly to do with the bottom line, but they have an indirect bearing on the bottom line.
I love that. I love that, Pastor Amyas. The issue of loyalty and how often it mirrors how you treat your employees. Because the truth is, loyalty really is when your employees, your workers, give you their heart.
Yeah.
You can buy the hand, the skill, but you can't buy loyalty. They've got to volunteer it. And they do that because they know that you've also volunteered yours to them. I absolutely love that. And then, of course, also you touched on the issue of investing on them. And, of course, I know business leaders that say, hey, why should I invest? What if I invest and they leave? I love how another business leader answered that concern and said, what if you don't invest and they stay? With that thought, we would like to thank you, Pastor Amyas, for joining us and for your incredible thoughts once again on today's program. Viewers, we will be back soon. And when we are back, we're going to be having our next guest on our program. See you soon. We are back on Rays of Hope, Masikhanye. I am still your host, Sivu Kotela. And on this second section, we are joined by Grant Appel. Grant, welcome to Rays of Hope.
Thank you, Sivu.
I'm really happy to be having you here. As you know that today we are really discussing something foundational as we are starting this conversation on God's attitude towards business, entrepreneurship, as revealed in the Bible. And so in the last section, we were looking at that, through biblical lenses. But we decided to choose and invite somebody who is an embodiment of that balance, business, mission, life. And I could not think of a better person than Grant. And so once again, thank you, man. And we are so delighted to have you and honored to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. I don't know how much of a balance I have, but I'm trying.
Believe me, I know. Now, one of the things that always, before we get into the business of the business of the day, one of the things that excites me and I always find funny is your heritage and your family makeup. And talk to me about who is Grant, and talk to me about your family as well. And also, you are recently married.
Yes, that's correct.
I thought I should mention that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so very interesting story. I'm from the Cape Flats in Cape Town, the old colored designation.
Sure.
And so if you look at my family, we look like the United Nations because we're just a very interesting mix of different shades and colors and, but our culture's from the Cape Flats and really grew up with two amazing parents, mom and dad, who brought us up with enough discipline to be able to do well and love and support to really be able to thrive. We're a family of 5. I have a younger brother and a younger baby sister. Mm-hmm. And we are all now engaged or married. My brother's married to an Indian woman. My sister is engaged to be married to a Lebanese Arab man. And I am married to a French South African.
United Nations, I tell you.
Exactly. And I have a little I'll call it a quote-unquote adopted son who's Xhosa. So it's quite a mix at home, but it's beautiful and I love it.
Sure, and obviously that has shaped even your outlook on life and interactions with others. But has it also shaped your how you engage in the business world, the work that you do?
100%. I think when you are involved in business as a professional, there are certain things that make you who you are, and it's different for everybody.
Sure.
In my journey, I've found that I love people. And people don't always see that as a very positive business trait because it might come across as soft. I think it's incredibly valuable.
Sure.
And I think if I look back, not by design, but I think the varied groups of friends that I have and people who I love and call family and interact with has undoubtedly shaped my ability to, I hope, connect with people in a genuine, authentic way, and I think that's incredibly valuable.
Sure.
So yes, 100% yes.
Sure. Thanks for that. All right. Before we go into what you're doing now, give me your professional background.
Okay.
Where do you come from? We are going to end where you are now, but give me your professional background.
Okay, so I am trained as a bean counter. I qualified as a chartered accountant. It was a journey. It was, I started out at school as sort of like the top student, and we did really well. When I got to university, it never went that well, but eventually, after a meandering, very scenic route, qualified as a chartered accountant. I'm still busy completing a minor dissertation for a master's that I'm doing, but I went and specialized in finance. Did a master's, and really had an experience in financial services and also property within the context of financial services throughout my life. So did my article training, worked at a fund administrator, and then ended up at the largest independent financial services group in the country and in South Africa, and it was just the most amazing experience I could have had.
That must be quite, for me, that's very important. Here we have a boy from the Cape Flats, as it were, and for him to be able to have reached where you are, and I believe, knowing you is just the beginning. More is yet to come. But before we continue with our conversation, there is that young person that is facing odds, be it from where they grew up, the societal limitations, or even family limitations. But they listen to you, and they also want to be where you are and overcome what they are facing. What do you have to say to that person?
No, 100%. I'm very fortunate. In our country, apartheid and all those things. There are many. There's a way to look at all of our situations and say we. Sort of were disadvantaged, and that is true. I was the first person with a degree in my family. I was definitely the first person to go to UCT, which was a really, really big deal. It was every single step that you took was the first step. I was the first person to go to school on the other side of the railway line. So it was sort of a Model C school, and things had changed by then, but there were a series of firsts. And so I think in some sense, it was impressive, but I also had advantages. I happened to have a mother who was a teacher, parents who really cared about education, who really sacrificed to give us the best. But having said all of that, I think the lesson over there is that, they're twofold. One, you can achieve. My sister just came back from studying in Paris and at Yale in the United States. And we are from a very humble family on the Cape Flats. My brother's doing amazing things as an engineer. It's possible to rise above circumstance. And then I think also what's very important with that is that if we hope to make a change, then when we do have any level of success, it's very important to give back and bring up people around you as much as you can. You don't have to publish it out loud, you don't have to, but sort of one person by person,
Sure.
in your circle of influence, big or small.
I love that.
Do the best that you can. Because if it wasn't for my parents, I wouldn't be here today.
Sure. And of course, thanks, man. Thanks. I appreciate that. And then, all right, with that journey, we find you and we locate you today at Life Check.
Oh, yes.
Very disruptive enterprise. Briefly talk to me about what you guys do.
Okay, excellent. So maybe just to qualify, I'm not one of the founding members of Life Check, and definitely did not have money to put in, sort of as a major investor into
Sure.
Life Check. But a few years into, so for those of you who don't know, Life Check is a financial services company, a financial technology company in financial services. It's a pioneering, disruptive company founded by a group of young people, all my own age. And I was in my dream job, going along with my career, really loving what I was doing.
Sure.
And decided to join and become a shareholder in the business. And that's really my role there. Senior leader. I eventually moved now to where I head up sales and business development. So my role is really to grow the company.
Sure.
So whatever new avenue that we take on
Sure.
as a business, however we pivot, my role is to make sure that we expand that, get more clients, get more partners, and build the business. So I have moved from a bean counter to hopefully a bean grower.
Definitely.
That's pretty much what I do.
Sure. So, look, anybody that knows you, they know your passion about your spirituality, about your faith, and not just at a personal level as well, but also for mission. And when I first met you, I really thought that they will say to me, please meet Pastor Grant. and then I later learned that you are not a pastor, though you are not a pastor in a conventional way.
Yeah.
And has that ever been a consideration for you? And have you ever had to choose between this or that, or have you integrated all of them such that you don't have to choose? Talk to me about your relationship between your faith, your spirituality, and your missional outlook and your entrepreneurial journey.
Okay, awesome. I mean, look, thanks for that. I do count it an honor because, it's something I care about
Sure.
a lot. My faith is an important part of my journey. Before I continue, I'm a flawed person. I don't know who's watching this. Maybe somebody sees me from work or somewhere else. Like, I really am a very ordinary person and have the same challenges that anybody else has. So I don't really like the idea of putting myself
Sure.
on a pedestal in any way, and that's quite important for me to say. But as I've been involved in church since I was young, in my former church, and then also joining sort of the movement that I'm part of now. And has there ever been a time when I've had to question both? Yes and no, I'd say. Yes, because I've felt a calling to be involved. I've felt a calling to preach. People have said I've had the gifts that are commensurate with a role as a pastor or full-time, missionary. But I've always had a passion for what I'm doing. And I guess the decision that I made was that I can't choose either. I have to choose both.
Sure.
I could only do it by doing the business during the full-time section of our day, the 9 to 5. But for a very large part of my experience as a young person, up until very recently, I decided that I'll just have two professions. And so, I decided to commit myself to ministry, outside of maybe the recognized channels that the church offers without employment or recognition of role, and just to work on using the talents that I had to support the mission of the gospel outside of the church. And I did both, I hope, well enough. And so, that's been the journey for me, and it's been a rewarding journey. I think as I also did it, I began to learn that I really did feel as though I could have more impact outside of the formal ministry than inside, if it was approached in the right spirit. And I think there's a humility that you have to take on. I don't know if I've done it successfully, where you submit yourself to the greater good and not make it about yourself. And independently of any support, support other people who've committed their lives to doing the same thing. It's a very, very interesting thing to do, but one that by God's grace, I think we've at least be able to have some success in doing. Sure. And I was lucky that I could do both.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did, because we are beneficiaries of that. But tell me, what are the takes from business that have impacted and contributed to your ministry? Yeah. And what are the takes from ministry, your spiritual side, that have contributed to your chair in the boardroom?
I must say, I think that my work in the church has undeniably given me a huge advantage in business.
Really?
Even more so than my work in business has provided me with advantages at church. And that's surprising to me. Well, on one level, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. It's very rare in a business context. I've moved from a bean counter to somebody who, in some senses, is the face of our business. Sure. Who speaks to other people. And people were surprised by how well I adapted to those things. When I look back, all I could think of was the fact that I'd preached 200 sermons or more over the 10 years that I'd been involved in ministry. When it came to motivating or inspiring people, I realized, to run a non-profit, organization of volunteer lay people to minister for free, you have to be able to inspire them and motivate them without offering them anything in return. And I realized that a lot of that came from my work in the ministry. So it was incredibly valuable. And then I think, some of the disciplines that come with the organization of labor and the, utilization of a scarce set of resources with very clear outputs that are needed in business definitely helps in ministry, because I think sometimes we get lost in the fuzziness and the feeling of ministry without really holding ourselves accountable in the same way that we would in business. And I think there has been that relationship between the two, definitely.
Oh, thank you, man. And I don't know where the time, it went so fast. I'm starting to enjoy this even more. Yeah. But hey, there are viewers that are watching that. There's somebody that is feeling a sense that, yes, I'm in business, but I sense that life cannot be just about chasing the next paycheck, the next deal, that there's more to this. And what do you have to say to them? What can you say to encourage them to integrate their spirituality, their faith, and their feeling called to the business world?
God speaks to us individually, and follow the voice that He has laid on your heart. People will try and persuade you one way or the other, but do the thing that God has placed closest to you. If He's called you to be a business person, be the best business person you can be. Don't look over at people who've committed themselves to the ministry and think that you're doing any lesser work. If you've been called to the ministry, don't look over at people having success in business and focus on that. Do what you're doing, do it to the best of your ability. Stay humble, continue to learn. Realize that there are people you can reach in business that you'd never be able to reach as a minister. People you'd reach as a minister who you'd never be able to reach in business. God needs everybody to do the best. And then I think the main thing probably is you don't have to compartmentalize your life in the way that we often think we need to. Use your work to the glory of God. Be humble, because you'll make mistakes. And people will see how you respond to the mistakes that you make. But you can influence an organization. You can plant seeds of God's love wherever you are. And then if God calls you to be involved in some other formal ministry, take everything that you've learned there and just plow it in. And the world will be blessed, and hopefully there will be many, many, many more people in heaven because of what we've all done, and people will be blessed by your life.
Thank you, Grant. Really enjoyed having you here, and we really appreciate that you took your time to join us. May God bless you, and may God increase your territory.
Thank you.
Viewers at home, thank you for joining us. Please stay tuned. We will be back soon. We are back. Welcome to Rays of Hope, Masikhanye. I am Sivu Kotela, your host, and I am pleased to let you know that I am joined by Nokhanyo-Maceba. Nokhanyo, welcome to Rays of Hope.
Thank you so much, Sivu. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy that and I'm looking forward to this conversation with you. Have you always known that you're going to be an entrepreneur, that you want to take this route? And what has been the journey like? What were you doing before you became one? Talk to me about your journey to being an entrepreneur.
Thank you very much, Sivu. You know, if you would come to me 5 years back and you would say, you would be an entrepreneur, I would have laughed so hard because me and being a businesswoman were two different, spaces. I used to work for a district municipality as an agricultural development coordinator, where we were helping and assisting farmers to better their produce and do better what they do, which is farming. And I was so comfortable in that space, and it felt good until it was no longer comfortable anymore. I believe when purpose is knocking at your door, or when destiny now comes to fetch you, how you see things change. For me, things changed drastically. I was no longer enjoying my work. I was drained whenever I go to work. And it was not so easy to render the services to the very same farmers. So I would come from a meeting with the farmers, come back to my superiors and say, this is what I would love to happen in order to make these farmers' lives better. And guess what? I would reach a ceiling. They will make it difficult for me to do it. And it was as if it was now time for me to go and do it for them without going through other processes where there are a lot of red tapes. So for me, being a businesswoman, it was not something that I knew that one day, I would say, business is not for me. And I was convinced that I did not have business acumen for a very long time. But 2020, 2021, those 2 years, just gave me a different perspective of life. It was just time. It was just time, and I knew it is now or never. This ship is sinking. If I don't jump off now, I'm gonna be a Jonah. I'm gonna cause this ship to drown because I'm inside. I need to jump off so that the rest is saved.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Nokhanyo. Now, you are in an interesting field, of course, land farming. What business do you do? What's the name of your business, and what do you guys do?
Okay, thank you so much. The name of my company is Agruse. Now, there's nothing wow about the name. It's actually a combination of two words, agricultural use. But I thought it should be Agruse. It sounded more,
yes, I know.
More Frenchish. So I was like, okay, it should be Agruse. And when someone is asking, what's the name of your company? I'll say, it's Agruse. And people will be like, Agru what? Agru what? So for me, it is Agruse. Agruse is an agricultural consulting and coaching company. Okay. What I do there, I lobby. Let me start there. I lobby people to consider agriculture, not only as a career of choice, but as a way to life. And I'm promoting agriculture within the space of Eastern Cape through agricultural camps, which I'm going to start soon. I think later on we'll tap into that space. And I'm in the business of making agriculture fashionable. You won't believe, Sivu, as much as I'm telling you that I'm a company owner, but I'm also a garden girl. I've got gardening services in my company. We render those services, and I'm a garden girl. I'll be on my boots and, leading an army of men, to render this previously known industry to be man industry. And it's led by me. So I'm penetrating the space, I'm there. I'm just being present. I'm just being present.
But tell me, Nokhanyo, what are the people know you as Ubeyezolimo and agriculture and farming. But talk to me, what are the opportunities that are there for young people that are watching this show right now? What is happening in that sector?
Also, with a lot of opportunities. You know, the most saddening thing is that many people go and study agriculture to be employed. You will never see how big and versatile is the industry if you only subject yourself to employment. But I always encourage young people to go and study agriculture so that after studying it, you don't go and prepare a CV, you go and prepare a business proposal. Unfortunately, I don't know whether it's an education system that creates a mentality for one to be dependent on employment more than being able to do your own thing. So when it comes to employment, one can be many things. You're a soil scientist. I remember when I was starting doing my first year at varsity, I wanted to be a soil scientist. Voila! When I went there the first year, it required a lot of chemistry and physics. I was like, ooh, imagine stoichiometry and me, you know, no, we're not friends. So I felt like, okay, I won't be a soil scientist. Maybe I should be a crop scientist. Also, it had different requirements. So you can be a vet, you can be an engineer, you can be whatever when you study. That's it. But moreover, you could just simply be a food producer. That's what we need the most. We don't need all these nice titles, you know? We just need food producers. And it's so discouraging to know that our country, we're suffering from food deficiency. And you ask yourself, how come? Because there are many lands that are there. You know, they are not being tilled. No one is working. In fact, if you drive through the former Transkei region in the Eastern Cape, you will see it's a disgrace. Areas where they used to be used as food basket. You will find those areas, Sivu, they're just lying there because we all flooding towards employment. No one is in the business of producing food. That's where I'm calling people. Let's go back to the basics. We need food. We don't need titles. We need to produce food so that we do not suffer. We don't need to be a country that begs for food in other countries, but we need to produce our own food so that these different countries, they come and bow to us and ask for food, like it used to be in the time of Joseph, and I don't want to preach.
I love that. I know you could. But tell me, Khanyo, I mean, you are encouraging food production and asking people to come and join you in this train of towards food production. But what type of person does one need to be, and are there any specific preparations, trainings, maybe qualifications, or even personality and character traits for one to make it in this space?
Okay, thank you so much, Sivu. Like in any industry, without passion, you're not going anywhere. One needs to be so passionate about this thing called
agriculture. It comes through, I can tell you.
Because they don't call me Bey Wezolimo for nothing. And when I tap into this space, I run with it. So it is more about passion. I often say, I did not choose agriculture. Agriculture chose me. I got an academic training through agriculture, but that was not by choice. When I was doing my matric, a teacher came to me and said to me, there are bursaries that are there in agriculture, and it's guaranteed once you finish your varsity years, you're going to be employed. That was the situation then. By the time I finished varsity, that was no longer a situation. But I remember when we started our first year, we all flooded there because we knew there are milk cards, there are bursaries, and I remember I started a song in my classroom. I said, agriculture, man, yeah, and everyone was like, yeah. There was this hype about agriculture. So I felt like, why would I not choose a career that will feed me as I'm studying and ensure job opportunity for me in the end? But unfortunately, Sivu, that is not the case anymore now. One needs to be passionate about it, and someone who is so persistent. One once made an illustration and said, a drop that is consistent can break a rock. A consistent drop can ultimately break the rock. So one of the things that we need is the element of persistency.
Sure.
Because this industry, trust me, it's very risky. I remember a friend of mine once decided, okay, fine, let me leave employment and go and do agriculture.
Sure.
Guess what? He went and did agriculture, spent all his pension monies there. What happened? There was drought and there was no yield.
Sure.
It was so bad that he was considering going back to employment.
Sure.
But even that door now was closed because it's bad when it comes to employment. So it needs someone who has a lot of resilience, the ability to bounce back and say, okay, fine, it didn't work out this time, let me do it one more time. And also, you need to be a social being. You need to interact with people.
Sure.
Because trust me, if you're not interactive with people, you'll be stuck with your yield, you'll be stuck with your food that
and you have no one to give it to.
Yes,
sell it to. Yeah.
because at the end of the day, you need to go to the market, you need to establish relations with those people who are your target market. So it needs someone who's talkative. I'm not saying I'm the right person, but I'm just saying you need a little bit of that element of being
Vavavoom or something. I'm with you. I'm with you. But here's because it's very easy to romanticize about business and entrepreneurship in particular. But the truth is, more than 80% of businesses that are started within the first year, they die.
Yeah.
Why do you think is that, number one? But also number two, in business generally. But in this space, what are some, as you are observing, are some of the things that have made those that you may know would have started but failed in this particular field?
Okay, Sifu. I love that question so much because in my employment years, I used to deal with young people who started promising projects. And as we do by the way, I studied Bachelor of Agricultural Economics and Marketing. So we would do, projections and do calculations and say, in 3 years' time, this is where you could be. And unfortunately, we would experience adverse weather conditions and will result in them not getting there at an estimated time. That will cause many young people to be discouraged. Why? Because they went to agriculture for money. Any business that you go to or that you start because you want to make money, trust me, that business is not sustainable. When you start a business, you need to bring a solution to a problem. You need to sell a solution. As I've indicated before, that as a country, we're facing a tragedy of food production deficiency, and we need people who will be food producers. So when I started my company, I did not start it from a point of saying, no, I want to make billions, though I'm not against billions, trust me. They should come my way, oh Lord, I receive. But I started it because I was seeing a challenge of many young people who are frustrated, having their qualifications, but unemployed. And I would see many of those opting to destroy their lives and feel like education is no longer valuable because you'll be educated and not going. So when I started it, I wanted to bring a solution, to create a mindset that detaches an academia from an employment route to more of a business route. And I remember there were 5 guys which challenged me. They did farm management in some university. 5 of them came to my office and said, hi, we want employment. I was like, okay, what kind of a job do you want? We studied agriculture, and everyone was looking at me because I was the only agricultural practitioner which was there. And I said, so in simple English, you want to take my job from me, like you're here to snatch my job from me. And they said, no, sis, it's bad. Every morning we wake up, we go and we volunteer and we come back, it's bad. And I asked him a question, what did you do? And he said, farm management. And what did you do? He said, farm management. And what did you do? Farm management. I said, 5 months trained into being farm managers. You don't see a business opportunity there. Then I sat them down. I said, currently, land reform, the department, is faced with a challenge of the farmers where they issued out to many farmers long time ago. Those farms are not doing well. But but you have a qualification in farm management. If you could combine yourself, register an entity, and then render a service to the government and say, we can play an incubation role to these farmers that you've given this. So when I say sell solution, don't go for money, sell solution, and the sustainability of your business will be there. Like you'll still be around in 10 years to come. Because as long as the problem exists, your business exists. But when you come for money, when money is not there, business comes to an end.
One last question, Khanyo. What are exciting projects what's in the future for Nokhanyo? Nokhanyo, the person, the entrepreneur, but also future plans for Agrusi, but also what are the projections and developments in the space, your farming, agricultural space?
All right, thank you so much, Sivu. As I've alluded at the beginning of our conversation, that this year, 2021, we're starting the Eastern Cape Agricultural Student Camps. And
that sounds exciting.
It is exciting. You know, Eastern Cape, in fact, is known to be an agricultural potential area.
Sure.
You know, has high agricultural potential. But that is not the case when you go there. Why? Because even those who are at school, they're not interested in agriculture. So through those student camps, we want to ignite the appetite so that, and we expose them in the versatility of the industry. They get to meet different professions or professionals, and they get to meet different companies that are within the space. You know, when you are in your tiny village there, you might be convinced to think that no, agriculture is that just extension, that extension officer that is there, that is tired, you know, and went out. But we want to expose them in greatness of agriculture. We want to expose them into those projects that produces massive numbers of food, massive tons of food. So we want to give them that exposure and lobby bursaries for them so that when they go to varsity, they choose agriculture. So
Agriculture,
So this year we're starting that, and because of COVID, we're going to start with 100, and we're going to have one district where we'll host it, but it will accommodate the entire province. And so far we've got the buy-in of the provincial agricultural office.
Wow.
And when I presented this, they said, we're in. So there's that thing. Moreover, I continue lobbying, and because I believe deep down, it was God's ideal for us to live an agrarian lifestyle. That's where we are, that's who we are. And the day we invest more in that, life will be better for us and the entire nation.
I love that. Life will be better for us and the whole nation. That is a perfect place to end this conversation. Nokhanyo, thank you once again for joining us on Rays of Hope.
Thank you so much, Sivu.
Our viewers at home, I trust that you enjoyed that inspiring and informative session with Nokhanyo and the entire episode. And if you have any questions or comments, please remember to send them to masikhanye@cc.adventist.org. The email address is written at the bottom of the screen, and there is also a number there when you can also call or send a message. The scripture says, as we receive the light, we go into the world and share it. And as you start and you go out there, remember, Masikhanye. Till next time, bye.